Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. And here we are on a beautiful Monday. I'm going to remove this. Hello. I'm waiting for my kids to stop yelling upstairs. Good morning. Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You knew that because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. And, well, my name's also on the screen. It's the second week of the show. We have already fallen back into the 5-minute rule with me. It's 8:05. 5 minutes late for my own show. Somebody brought that up in the comments already. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you for joining me today on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. You can find this show in a lot of different places. Let me do the rundown really quickly, if you'll indulge me for a second. So this is available over on YouTube Live at The Russ Joy Show. It's also over on the Joy Media LLC accounts on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. And it's also on the Russ Joy Show X account as well as my own, at Joy on Broad. If you don't follow me already, it might be time. And there are some of you who are very new to the show because you heard what I had to say about the Philadelphia Union yesterday on Monday's Crossing broadcast. And we're going to get to that because I'm not done. I am going to replay some of those comments, though, because I think it's important to set the stage and set the context. And I don't want to just do a mealy-mouthed version of what yesterday was. I'm going to pick up exactly where I left off from yesterday. And it's like this weird thing. It's kind of the beauty of doing that show on a Monday, this show on a Tuesday. Then I get a day off. I go back on that show on Thursday, and then we're back here on Friday. It's 4 days a week. I didn't think about that when I started this show. I was like, oh, I'll do the show twice a week. I'll mix in a Snow the Goalie. I have to get back on the horse with It's Just Wrestling. Maybe that'll be my 4 days a week. And instead, it's really turning into like 5 or 6 days a week. But that's okay, because as long as you find folks continue to join me, it makes it all worth it. Now, we're going to get into the Union in a second. We've got the Philadelphia 76ers. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I want to get a little bit more into it today. But I think that the first thing for us to do, if it's okay with all of you, and by all means, you can let me know in the comments where you want the show to go today and if there's anything that I missed. But as of right now, we're talking Sixers, we're talking Union. If you want some Flyers stuff later in the show, drop a comment. If you want some Eagles stuff in the show, drop a comment. If you saw something in national sports that you really want to talk about today or you want to get my thoughts on, we'll go back and forth in the comment section. By all means, drop that in the comments below. But I do want to start off where I left off yesterday with a little bit of heat on the Philadelphia Union. And I know that there are quite a few people who watch this show and who listen to this show who remember how I kind of jokingly said in the trailer for the show, like, yeah, maybe we'll get to the Union. Maybe. And it's not me crapping on the Union. I'm very clear. I think it's important to set a little bit of context here. I think it's important to set the stage a little bit for why I got as worked up as I did yesterday, which you're about to hear. And I think it's important that everyone understands that I do actually care about that team. I always go back to this idea that I'm very much a Sixers emotional fan because it's the only, my family didn't really care about sports. My parents didn't really care about sports. I didn't grow up a sports fan. I think I really became a sports fan in middle school. I remember watching Vince Carter and thinking like, that's amazing. And Vince Carter's actually who got me into basketball. And then I found the Sixers and then I enjoyed the Sixers. And it wasn't until then that I figured out that my grandma, she was a basketball player in high school and that she really liked basketball. So she and I, our bonding was watching the Sixers. So I still have this emotional heartstring. I don't know if I could be objective. If I had to cover the Sixers, I could be objective. You have to kind of kill your fandom in order to cover a team. But the Sixers I allow to still get me emotionally. And I never really mention it because the Union are the 5th team in the city. And the Union are a team that was trending in the right direction and has certainly fallen off this year, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But I have allowed for the Union to probably pull at my emotional strings because for a long time, people in and around this area wanted a soccer team. And there was a group of people who went to City Hall, who petitioned Major League Soccer that they wanted a team and went out and supported a team that didn't exist yet. And it spoke to the fan base. It spoke to the rabid following that soccer could have in this area. And so I was not one of the people who showed up to that, but I was a season ticket holder, I think, in 2014. I think it was 2014. It might have been 2015. I don't remember. The years all started to combine when I got married, and then within a year we had a kid and all that. But I was a season ticket holder. eventually, I gave up those season tickets for a bunch of reasons. Eventually, through Crossing Broad, I covered the Union. I was at the game where they won the Supporters Shield. I played in their media game. I've enjoyed being around the Philadelphia Union. I've enjoyed covering that team. So I don't come at this from the perspective of like some of the legacy media. And you can think of some of the people who are columnists for the big paper in town who seem to always have an agenda or often have an agenda. And in a lot of cases, people get very upset and get very frustrated with them because it feels like they're doing things in what some might call bad faith. I'm not that guy. But I said when I started this show that the whole point was when I saw hypocrisy, I was going to call it out. And when I saw things that I thought were largely disappointing, I was going to call them out because that's just how this works. And so I want to play for everyone what happened yesterday because something awful happened over the weekend. And the Philadelphia Union went from being a team that nearly won the MLS Cup, the pinnacle of the sport, right? At least for the league, right? We're not talking about when the U.S. Open Cup was like a cool thing, but you said like, all right, that's playing amongst the American leagues. And it's not quite the same thing as playing in the CONCACAF Champions League. Some might argue that's a more prestigious title. MLS Cup is where it's at because we're American sports fans, and we truly believe that you have to win the championship game for you to be the champion. It's not enough to win the Supporters Shield or the President's Trophy in hockey where you have the most points at the end of the regular season. American fans want to see you are the last team standing. So they were there. They nearly won it. And then they allowed for Gareth Bale to have a wide open header. They ultimately go on to lose MLS Cup. They ran it back. And then this year, a lot of people, including myself, we were very critical because they seemed to be running it back again. Whether you're a Union fan or a soccer fan or not, if you're a sports fan, which you likely are if you're watching the show, you know how stupid it is to run it back. Unless you are either an incredible team in the midst of a dynasty, even then you're supposed to tweak it. Or you're a team that thinks, you know, we're right on the cusp. We have to make one tweak. But that's not what this team was. And that truly isn't what this team should have ever viewed themselves as being. So I want to get to yesterday's comments because, again, I'm not going to say I toot my own horn on this one, but like, I think it's important that everyone has the context, especially if you're not someone who's been familiar with the show that I do on Mondays. And I have a 2-screen setup here, and I'm trying to figure out how to, there we go. All right, here we go. I'm going to play this for you. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, great. But this is going to give you context because I'm not done with calling out some of the people who I think genuinely screwed up in a massive way over the weekend. It starts with ownership. But the fans, the supporter section, the Sons of Ben, they are not without sin. And we're going to get into that very, very soon. Let me get to yesterday's comments because yesterday's comments ultimately, I think, are the thing that's going to make the most sense. So here we go. This is from yesterday. And then we'll be back and I'll finish this up. An absolute disgrace. An absolute mess. Kincaid and I touched on this a little bit last week and then it got worse. Craig, I don't know if you found the video or if you found the images of what happened over the weekend. I have so many problems with what are going on around the Philadelphia Union, not the on-field product. The on-field product is what it is. This team decided that for whatever reason, they were going to run it back after running it back. And 2 years removed from making it to an MLS Cup final and letting Gareth Bale have a wide open header on the back post that took you to actually, like, you had the MLS Cup in your hands. You blew it. Fine. They chose to run it back again a year later. Not exactly fine. They have now since sold off arguably their best forward in Carranza. He gone. They brought back Kai Wagner, who looked like he was going to leave last offseason, and then there was a certain slur that was used on the field, and perhaps maybe some of those suitors went away, and he came back, and he's still probably the best left back in MLS. But the team is largely unchanged. And then things fell apart. Craig, let's bring it up. Because I think Pagan did something over on the site. There was a sign, this one, sell the team. Scroll down because I want to see if he had the other one. Or was it Kincaid? I can't see that far. The screen's way too far away. Play this video, Craig. Play the video down below. There was a sign. We don't need the audio for it if you don't want. It's totally fine. Just play that. At the risk of not having a DMCA takedown, we've gotten rid of the video. And the one sign, I think it was this one, said the sugar ain't sweet. Sell the team. That, of course, is a reference to Jay Sugarman, the owner of the team, a guy who, for the most part, doesn't make himself available to the media, only really shows up, there's the sign, only ever really shows up when something has gone significantly well. For the most part, is like a shadow broker. There was the time when they made the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup final that he landed on the field in a helicopter on the practice fields. He is useless. Jay Sugarman, you don't like being called useless? You can reach out to Kevin Kincaid, and you guys can talk. He's never made available. And a couple months ago, and I will welcome this guy to come on to this show or to the Russ Joy Show, I don't care. But he sat down with Jonathan Tannenwald over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And Jonathan Tannenwald put together a fluff piece. He put together an interview that didn't get to the heart of a lot of the concerns of the fan base, that didn't hold anything accountable, didn't ask questions really about why is it exactly that you chose and continue to facilitate this idea that running it back is a good idea. And he threw out this idea that Jim Curtin, the coach, and Ernst Tanner, the front office executive, if they come to him with a request for a player, Jay Sugarman's going to make it happen, which is total bullshit. Not true. No chance. This team, since its inception, has needed a legitimate designated player level striker. They have not gotten it. They have been able to go dumpster diving a few times. They've been able to pull guys that you've never heard of before who come over and do perform, which I would say is a large function of having Ernst Tanner, who I still think is one of the best executives in all of MLS and is by far the best at his position in the history of the Philadelphia Union. I don't fault him. I think that they have a cheap ownership. I think they have an owner who has a small market mentality, who's just happy that his ROI is going to be 3x, 4x, 5x, maybe even more. Now, Jillian checks in over on YouTube and says, in Montreal, the fan group chanted at Sugarman, who was nearby, and he walked away. This guy doesn't get called out by like people who actually could have a critical conversation. This is the problem with me trying to move too many things around at once. I wanted to pause that for a second because context is key. Context, if you work in media, is ultimately critical. So I'm pausing there for a second because I want to get to a couple of the quotes from the piece. I referenced the piece with the Inquirer, and in this clip that we'll go back to, I reference it again. So I want to just be fair. I want to make sure that people know, especially for the new people, that I'm not just throwing a bunch of bullshit out there. I want you to know that when I call out media, I typically bring the receipts because that's important. If I say something stupid on this show or on Crossing Broadcast or on Snow the Goalie or any other show, ultimately it comes back to me. I have to be responsible for what I say. It's how it works. Talking to a microphone, you put things out publicly, you have to do it. You write something on a site, especially a legacy media outlet like the Inquirer, when things come out, when quotes are brought into a piece, they're now fair game. So here are the quotes from that article from the Philadelphia Inquirer from a few months ago. The name of the story, let me see if I can find it really quickly as I kind of dolt around here. What are the union's ambitions? Owner Jay Sugarman opens up about how he sees he sees them. Sorry. So that was from back in May. Here's one of the quotes. This is one of the first ones that pissed me off and probably pissed off Union fans. Knowing how close the Union are to be truly elite, is he, Jay Sugarman, more inclined now to push the boat out, to up the ante, and yes, to spend more money? Perfectly fair framing. Sugarman says, quote, I ask Ernst, Tanner, every week. We have weekly calls, and I say, what do we need to be successful? Sugarman said, he's 100 times smarter about it and what it takes to be a sustainably excellent team, referring to Tanner. So I defer to him. And if he comes to me and says there's a piece we must have, he's going to get support. This is what I said is bullshit yesterday. And, according to Tannenwald, for emphasis, he added, there's no resistance to our technical staff saying, here's a piece we really need. Okay, so if that's true, which I don't think it is, but if that's true, that means that where I typically sit back and say, hey, Ernst Tanner is one of the best executives in MLS, is easily the best sporting director this team's ever had, then it's his fault, right? Because his decision to run it back, apparently unilaterally, is the reason that the Union are in the state that they are. And the fact that they haven't gone out and made any kind of a big money signing of any real value, brought any kind of star power in, really brought in a DP level striker that's not somebody that you found in the second division of Germany or the fourth division of Norway, right? I'm joking here, but like kind of. They've gone dumpster diving. Like they found Kai Wagner at the bottom of a trash pile somewhere in probably Süddeutschland. I'm not sure. I forget. But they've been able to kind of like polish up turds or what appear to be turds, and they turn them into very good players. And in fairness, a lot of the Union players that they have found that have had absolutely no fanfare have actually developed into or proven to be very good players, which again is why I come back to Ernst Tanner and I say, this guy is the real deal. He is 100% the kind of executive that any team in the league would be lucky to have. Okay, let me now go back to the video from yesterday because I have more quotes. I have more quotes, and some of them from this article from the Inquirer are absolutely damning. I mean, they're disgusting, but I feel like it's better to kind of splice in between me here and me yesterday. What a narcissist, right? It's two of me. Sorry. All right, here we go. Back to yesterday's quotes. Jonathan Tannewald at the Inquirer could have had that conversation. Didn't do it. And the reason that I'm incensed about it, and then I'll get back to the Sons of Ben and how they piss me off, as somebody who was once a season ticket holder, and as somebody who got into it once with, I don't know, it was a fucking capo or whatever doesn't matter. Bunch of self-indulgent pricks at the time. Maybe they're not anymore. Some of them were. Jonathan Tannewald does this story a few months ago, and Sugarman talks about how it's important that they leave spots on the senior team, on the actual Philadelphia Union team that you pay money to go see, or you pay money to Apple TV to watch on TV. It's a great stadium, great place to tailgate. I loved the atmosphere going to Philadelphia Union games, okay? I covered them when they won the support show. I genuinely want that team to be something and to matter. But they have taken it from where it was a cup finalist to running it back and being very close to doing it again to what is essentially like, are they going to even make the playoffs? And if they do, is it just going to be a bottom of the table kind of team? Tannewald has the owner who doesn't talk to the media. Sugarman says, it's better to not go out and get some guys who could block the academy players. And as if that weren't enough, and as if that weren't reason enough to be angry as a reader, if you have ever cared about the team, Tannewald added his own commentary that's actually a pretty sensible way to look at it. Because they've invested in the academy, it's a sensible thing to do to not block potential Union Academy players, which is such small-minded bullshit. It doesn't work in Philadelphia. It shouldn't. If Don Garber, the MLS commissioner, had cojones, he would look at this ownership and say, either sell the team or bring on more owners who are going to contribute money. One of your biggest market teams shouldn't be applying. All right, I have to interrupt myself because, again, quotes, context is key. Critical, 100% critical to this whole thing. So let's get back to those quotes, the ones from Sugarman and then Tannewald's assertion over top, which drove me nuts. All right, back to the piece from a couple months ago. Then came another caveat, but this one felt different from the past. This is what Sugarman says. It can't block the longer-term plans that Ernst has and the players coming up. This is about the idea of going out and acquiring players. Can't block the longer-term plans that Ernst has and the players coming up. So they can't go out and acquire guys that might mess up the long-term plan or that could block their academy players. And as if you're a Union fan, you know this team invests copious amounts of money, whatever money they have, into the academy. They don't really invest it in the senior team, but that's neither here nor there. Now, Tannewald, this is his commentary. The difference was not just in Sugarman's words, but in the truth behind them. Oh, now we're waxing poetic. Now we have commentary. Okay. the players coming up do have that much potential. Attacking midfielders, Kevin Sullivan and David Vasquez. Strikers, Anise Saidi, Jameer Johnson, and Diego Rocio. And center backs, Brandon Craig and Neil Pierre. Join me for a moment here, outside of Sullivan, truly, from the national stage, if we look back. Just join me in a collective. What? Okay, that's the commentary. Okay. We continue. This is Tannewald's commentary. Only Vasquez among them is truly close to playing for the first team, but the rest could be just a year or two away, depending on their ages. Their time truly is coming, and it's a good principle not to block them. That's not the owner. That was the writer. When I said yesterday it was a fluff piece, that's why I said it's a fluff piece. Sugarman, quote, "We don't just play for every weekend. We're looking at how we're going to be successful long term, and that requires young players to have a chance to play." I hate half of that comment, and I agree with the second half. The first half, we don't just play for Saturdays, is bullshit. My friend, not really my friend. The entire purpose of having a team in a professional sports league, in theory, is to win, is to try to win a title, to try to be the last team standing. And luckily, with soccer, with MLS, you have the ability to potentially go to the CONCACAF Champions League. You have the potential to play in other tournaments and bring in other trophies, which you haven't done yet in your tenure as owner. Since the inception of the team, haven't been able to do it, but that's okay. So, okay, maybe not just Saturdays, because sometimes they play on other days of the week. But in fairness, I don't think LAFC would say that. I don't think that some of the best teams in the league would try to make that comment in that moment. They would say that the future is certainly a part of our plan, and it is very important, but we want to win every game. That comment alone shows you, no, that's not the intent here. The intent here, at least from ownership, isn't how do we win every game? How do we give ourselves the best opportunity to win every game with the big team? Nay. How do we stay competitive, have a good team, get enough people in the stands that we make a nice return, that we can continue to fund when we add practice fields to where parking lots once were, when we build a training facility, when we start pushing things around. We need to still be able to get people through the turnstiles, get parking fees, get concessions fees. As long as we're like remotely competitive, we can continue to fund the academy and eventually bring up younger, cheaper players. And in theory, if this were a small market team, it would be brilliant. And I said yesterday, and I think we'll get into it here, I said a big market team shouldn't be employing Moneyball tactics, small market tactics. The whole idea of being a big market team is you use that to your advantage. You go out and you attract big, high-quality players because you are a big, high-quality sports market. That's not the case. The Tannewald part of this is what really continues to just sort of piss me off in a way. Because when you're writing, why don't I come back to it? I could come back to it. No, I'll do it now. When you're writing a piece, and it's an interview, right? Now, I'm assuming, Tannewald probably went to some journalism school. I don't remember. I didn't care enough to look it up. I'm sure he did. He writes for the Inquirer. He probably went to journalism school. When you're writing an interview with somebody who's at an ownership level, there are a few ways to go about it. You can have the back and forth Q&A, keep it very straight, almost a transcript of what could be released as video or whatever, right? You could go the route of using a couple of quotes from the owner. You have to be very, very careful not to fly too close to the sun. You cannot take the opportunity, the relatively rare opportunity to talk to this owner, to bring up some questions, but not really push too hard for fear of, lost access. I'm not really sure why. And then turn around and add your own commentary to boost up what they said. That's not how it's supposed to work. You can offer very neutral basis. Like he could say, hey, some of the guys he might have been talking about were these 5 or 6 players. That's a good way to stay neutral. But the difference was not just in his words, but the truth behind them. The truth according to whom? Am I to believe that each of the players' names who I read here are going to be meaningful contributors to the Philadelphia Union or to an MLS team or to another team. Is that what this is? I would say no. I think that's just flowery commentary. I don't think that's actually helpful. But the idea that the rest could be just a year or two away, depending on their ages, their time is truly coming, and it's a good principle not to block them. That is such bullshit. Again, a big market team doesn't worry about potentially blocking some fringe guys or some players who might be somewhat useful 5 or 6 years from now, who might hit their prime 6 years from now. That's not how this works. I had somebody yesterday when I said something to that effect, was like, well, Russ wants the Union to go out and get really good players and block the kids, but when he talks about the Flyers, he wants the Flyers to trade away good players and let the kids play. Yeah, because they're in two different places. The Union were in the MLS Cup 2 years ago. They have been, for the last 2 years, not including the season now, they, for the last 2 years, have been one of the best teams in Major League Soccer. They won the Supporters' Shield during COVID. They've been a very good team. So yes, they should be trying to add talent to try to win. Whereas a team that's in a rebuild, like the Flyers, should be getting rid of, mediocre at best players. Start to bottom out. Go after the elite talent because they don't have it. By the way, comparing those leagues is not apples to apples. I could do it. I do a very good job of it. Okay, I can. One of the very few people in media, I think, in this city or the greater area who pays as much attention to and has covered both of those teams specifically. They are not apples to apples. I digress. I'm going to go back to the thing from yesterday, and there are a lot of comments, and I want to get to them because I appreciate all the people who are joining live. So let me go back to yesterday's comments, and then we're going to move on. Here we go. Moneyball tactics. That's not how this is supposed to work. And when you were close, and when you had the cup in your hands 2 years ago, and when you ran it back, you had the chance to make the team better. You had the chance to actually do something. To, instead of just being the Phillies bitch in the summer, you had the chance not to compete with the Phillies, not to have the same kind of equity built up, but for people to care. I spent a decade saying the Phillies are not good. This is the time to invest in the Union because people were apathetic about the Phillies, put some money into the team, and then go out and get a star player. At least try. And get some of those people who are apathetic to the Phillies to come to the park, to believe, you build your fan base. I had been told years ago that the actual area that the Union Stadium, the Subaru Park, is built on, was actually set that they could extend, that they could expand the seating if the stadium, if the team ever got good enough and they built enough of a fan base. They had it. What the fuck were you people doing? Jay Sugarman, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Because you, for whatever reason, chose not to invest, chose not to bring on more minority owners who could invest. Kevin Durant, as a minority owner of the team, has a minority stake in the team. Because they didn't invest funds into that team, and because they chose to be complacent and to run it back, they have now put themselves in a position where they are not only just losing the chance to get those casual fans, they're not just losing some fans who have been around for the last 2 years watching a very good team. They are losing people who actively have chosen to support that team for over a decade. And that includes people, and I'm gonna have to, put a pin in this. Go subscribe to the other show for tomorrow. They are going to lose people who were supporting Philadelphia soccer before there was a team. The initial people who founded the Sons of Ben, who went down to City Hall, who were actively having like a campaign, MLS, give us a team. We have a large fan base in the greater Philly area. Give us a team. You're losing some of those people. But here's why I have to put a pin in it. Because I don't have enough time on today's show to get into why the Sons of Ben dropped the ball in the biggest way, in one of the worst sellout bullshit corporate messages I think I've ever seen a supporter section of a soccer team put out. We're getting there today. And I want that comment, by the way, Craig. I'll pull it up. Sean C. I can't wait for my season ticket opt-out opportunity. Gonna hit my inbox like a drug. There you go. There is a paying season ticket holder who is not only Not contemplating, do I do it, do I not? It's saying, I'm looking forward to opting out. Tomorrow on the other show, today, I'm going to tell you why the Sons of Ben dropped the ball. Yes. Not only did they have to put out their statement that nobody could read. That is true. They put it out 2 or 3 more times. There was sass, whole bunch of bullshit. And they said they didn't want to put their group at risk. I guess with ownership or with their standing with the team. And it is such a lazy cop-out. And it is so disgraceful. But given some of the interactions I've had with some of their leadership over the years, I have to be honest, I'm not exactly surprised. So let's get there. Because that was actually a part of yesterday that when I did that show, I was actually very excited to get into. Truly. Because I watched from a distance as the number one, allegedly, supporters section for the Philadelphia Union put out an absolutely lazy bullshit statement. Now, when I always say keeping people accountable, I'm going to tell you exactly how I know and why I know that this was bullshit, or at least why their concern or their fear or whatever it is that they have defaulted to is bullshit. I can tell you exactly why. And by the way, apologies if you're watching the show for the first time and you're not used to a little bit of profanity in your Philly sports coverage. My apologies. I guess I should put like one of those Pat McAfee disclaimers about how people talk in the real world. But here we go. I lit up Tannewald for doing what I think was a very poor job. I lit up the owner because I think the owner has been given the opportunity to just do whatever he wants, because it is sort of his right as the owner to do that, to fly in on a helicopter when they advanced to the final of the Open Cup a few years ago, for him to never really talk to the media, and that when the media finally does, they don't have the cojones to really ask him tough questions. Okay, fine. There is a group of people who should be able to speak, I forget what the phrase is. Sometimes I think it's bullshit. Speak truth to power or whatever. There is a group of people who could actually try to do something. There's a group of people who their very existence is largely based on the belief that they're supposed to be the ones who speak up for essentially the voice of the voiceless. The people who are supposed to have some kind of connection to the team, whether it's a formal or an informal relationship, they're supposed to speak up for the average fan. And that's the Sons of Ben. Now, I have a checkered past with the Sons of Ben. And the reason is like kind of simple. I mentioned earlier, I was a season ticket holder at one point. And I thought the Sons of Ben were great. I thought it was fantastic. They had C lot, I think, for the longest time, like way past the Wharf building. It was that final parking lot. And I loved the tailgates, and it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people. And I remember somewhere along the lines of when I think it was the year that I was a season ticket holder, the Union were absolute track. Things were totally falling apart. And we decided, like, we have to do something. Now, I say we. It was like a collective we. And it wasn't we, the Sons of Ben. I couldn't speak on behalf of them. I was a member. I wasn't in leadership. Now, if I remember correctly, the Sons of Ben didn't tacitly approve of the plan that was put into place. They didn't exactly formally say, yes, we are going to do this, but many of them participated. And I'm actually going to throw to that really quick, because for those of you who are not exactly sure, again, I come back to like many of you who are listening right now or watching are Union fans or have an understanding. But if you don't, I want you to understand just how crazy things used to be. Okay, so a few years ago, I think it was back in 2015, this happened. Nick Sakavitz was in control of the team, not the owner. He was a sporting director at the time. He was the one who shouldered most of the blame for what was happening. The inability for the team to spend, the inability and the unwillingness to seemingly improve the team. And so a large contingent of people, which there aren't many pictures still available online anymore. I swear I had seen a lot more. But anyway, we carried a coffin up to the gates of the stadium. Hashtag we deserve better. And then it was Nick Sakavitz, serial franchise killer. Now, what we didn't know, this is actually the part where it does suck, and we all felt bad about it after the fact. Apparently, he was battling cancer at the time. No one knew, okay? Because nobody, well, at least I certainly, am not the kind of horrible, disgusting human being who would have been like, oh yeah, guys, cancer, who cares? We'll carry a coffin. All right. So it apparently upset him and it upset his family. But in fairness, no one knew. So we walked that coffin to the stadium. There was a conversation at the time of, do we take the coffin? Do we try to take the coffin into the stadium, right? Imagine, because I think it was a nationally televised game. And even if it wasn't, imagine the optics of the supporter section or members of the supporter section going into the river end with a coffin with franchise serial killer or serial franchise killer, Nick Sakiewicz. Like, imagine what that would do on social media. Imagine what that would do. It probably would have made the national news on ESPN or somewhere, Fox Soccer, whatever. And ultimately it was decided, no, there's not going to be an effort to like storm the gates, to knock down the gates and take that in, okay? That wasn't going to happen. But it did get coverage. It did get some national coverage as this group of supporters marched to the stadium with a coffin. They got the point across that this status quo of not spending on the senior team was not acceptable and that the supporters had had enough. Now, I do remember at the time there were questions of different chants, different kinds of tifo. There were going to be like all different things of, what are we willing to do? And a lot of people still at the time were like, oh, well, we want to support the team. That's our goal. That's our point. We're supposed to support the team, supposed to support the players and the coaches. And like, that's great. But like, you have to at some point, like have a little bit of intestinal fortitude to say, you know what, like the players know we support them, but like, we gotta like stick it to ownership. Right. So that happened. It was effective. And like, we were 5 years later, they win the Supporter Shield. They eventually get to MLS Cup. Like it was a relatively quick turnaround, all things considered. They went from being a bottom-feeding team to actually starting to invest some money in the team, going out. They eventually got rid of Ernie Stewart. They brought in Ernst Tanner. Things really turned around. It was great. Okay, it is important. That's why I say front office executives can be really important. That's where we were a few years ago. Now I bring this back. Why did I have a problem with what the Sons of Ben did over the weekend? Because before the game, before ownership took the opportunity, or somebody in the event staff took the opportunity to confiscate signs, one of which was on the thumbnail for this episode, Sugar Ain't Sweet No More, Sell the Team. The Sons of Ben, who fans look to be their voice, dropped the ball horribly, disgustingly. And I'm going to show you what they did first. And it might seem like a little bit of, kind of like kicking them while they're down. But in fairness, like this wasn't exactly great. Sons of Ben go on to Instagram. I believe this went out to X too, but then eventually got deleted. They put out this statement. Now, the people who are listening in the podcast feed don't know why I'm squinting and probably don't understand why it's funny. That's why you go check out YouTube. They put out this statement. You can't read that. You would need to download that and zoom to read it. Okay, fine. So they took a little bit of heat and it became, all right, we're going to put it out as a PDF, which is what they did next. Then they shared it as a PDF. Okay. I'm going to read really quickly what the Sons of Ben said going into Saturday's game. We, the SOB board and Capo pool, fucking capos, have heard the call for protests and statements regarding the state of the team and apparent lack of resources being put into the team. The fuck does that mean, apparent lack of resources? Buddy, watch the team. Watch the running it back after running it back to front. Like, what are we doing? Come on. I called for a meeting between the board, Capo, and former board members who served with me in 2015 to discuss when and how we, the Sons of Ben, would protest. This meeting took place on July 1st, with a caveat that they should first not do anything that would put the Sons of Ben as an organization at risk. We'll get back to that. The Capo pool and board met, and all ideas were discussed, including suggestions from other members to anonymous social media posts. My other point of emphasis was to those in attendance was to not abandon the players or let it be questioned if we are. They're grown fucking adults. All right, I'm gonna probably start cursing a little bit more. So if you got kids around you, sorry, come back later. They're adults. The players are grown ass men. The coaches are grown ass men. Is there a woman on the staff? If there is, grown ass women on the staff. You're worried that if you do something that it's going to hurt their feelings? It's going to hurt the players' feelings. The players aren't going to feel supported. What, are they going to leave? They're going to point back to that date and say, the Sons of Ben walked out. When they walked out on us, I decided it's time to walk out on Philadelphia. No, that's not how this works. Anyway, we'll keep going. This was something asked by Jim Curtin when I spoke to him, or when I spoke with him on June 21st. That's fine. Jim, wonderful guy. Of course he's going to say, hey, would be nice to have the support, for the players. Fine. He's the coach. He's supposed to say that. He's also a grown-ass adult, and he's from this area, and he knows what Philly sports fans are like. All right, so this is like, let's be real here. Let's be real. I digress. Everyone in attendance was given the right to speak, and those not in attendance had their points read aloud. In the end, there is no one answer or course of action that would reflect all of the membership base once done. This is nearly identical to the board discussions in 2015. I've spent the last few weeks reading through them, looking for guidance. Again, we go back to the 2015 thing, to the coffin. It was not an approved thing by the Sons of Ben, but many participated. Make of that what you will. The Capo Pool and board members have decided on a course of action that will start today, July 6th, which will allow individual Sons of Ben and Union fans to join as they see fit. Well, they all have rights. So yes, they can do what they want. You don't have to give them approval for that. They can do that. Okay. I know that we have a plan has not been the reassuring message some wanted to hear. But the shrouded nature is required, so nothing can be done as a countermeasure. Oh, well, they must have been planning on doing something very big. Jared, the head capo, will be announcing the plans later this morning, as well as capo and board members sharing at the tailgate and game. Kenny Hansen, lovely guy. He was an absolutely lovely guy, taken too soon. Used to tell me he'd back this guy no matter what, usually followed by something like, just don't be an idiot. Kenny was a good guy. And I extend the same support to my capo, pool, and board members. I want to give 2 quotes to help clarify my personal stance and how this will continue to guide the board, the capo pool, and this group. Please keep in mind, the Sons of Ben exist to support the players on the field and the manager, but we also feel that our members have the right to express their displeasure with ownership when our group is not performing the way we feel they should be. This has to be a two-way street. When we have supporters as passionate as the Sons of Ben, sometimes it isn't always going to be exactly the type of passion you want. And then Kenny Hansen, I guess that was from Kenny Hansen in an open letter. And then there was another one. At a football club, there's a holy trinity, the players, the manager, and the supporters. And that was from a player and manager. Okay. I'm going to tell you why it's bullshit. And it's really simple. I promise it's not that serious. There is a lot of, at least from my perception, there is a lot of self-importance that comes around that group. And it might be like this with supporters sections everywhere. Maybe it is. But the Sons of Ben, in my mind, had little to nothing to do with what was apparently requested by ownership, which was a meeting that the Sons of Ben later went on to say that they've accepted. There were signs that were put up in the river end that were held up and confiscated, but they weren't by the Sons of Ben. They were by the Keystone Ultras, including the Sugar Ain't Sweet No More, sell the team. There was a yellow sign that said sell the team. I believe that was also with the Keystone Ultras. Another supporter section, like off in a little corner section, who do their own chants. Sometimes they join in with the Sons of Ben, but they do their own chants. And I would argue is kind of more like the spiritual successor to the people who initially wanted to create a team, have a team in Philly. The reason that this whole thing is bullshit is because somebody feels like they're getting some kind of perk, some kind of kickback, some kind of advantage to having a professional relationship with the team. That's how that reads. And when you are a supporter section, when you're a fan, and when you're an organization that fans look to be the spokesman, the conduit between the regular fans and the ownership, you're not supposed to just take whatever the ownership gives you. You're not supposed to be worried about hurting their feelings. Now, I want to get to some of the comments here because I have more to say about the Sons of Ben here, but we'll go here. Jillian, who joined me yesterday over on the other show, says, Jim gets it. He said as much. Drew wishes that Jim Curtin could speak his mind. Sure, he's sick of it, but he's just not that guy. Todd responds to Drew and says, Jim's basically said it when talking about how the teams bring on a $10 million player, like in NYCFC and LAFC, when the Union have Chris Donovan to bring off the bench. Sorry, Chris. The 140 casual says, my feelings were hurt. They stole my banner. So this guy's one of the people who had their banner stolen. And by the way, kudos to you for actually going into the stadium and taking that in and getting some press coverage because the Sons of Ben did not. And Jillian also checks in and says the Keystone Ultras include a bunch of ex-Sons of Ben. I guess that makes sense. Some people have argued that the Sons of Ben have become corporate sellouts. Would I say that? Maybe. Perhaps. So let me get back to this. Sons of Ben. what exactly is putting your organization at risk? What are you risking? If you created a TIFO that said sell the team, which they probably wouldn't be able to get past security, if you put something critical on the TIFO as the supporter section, what are you putting at risk? What exactly, and be specific. Somebody from Sons of Ben, by all means, you can come on the show on Friday or on another day. You could choose the day, I don't care. What are you putting at risk? If the ownership group severs ties with the Sons of Ben, it becomes national news, at least in the MLS version of the national news. If the ownership tries to actively boot a supporter section for being critical of ownership, you, friends, have a massive potential lawsuit on your hands. If they try to revoke your season tickets because you had the audacity to say sell the team, that could be actionable. Are you worried that they're not going to support your efforts tailgating? I'm sure that that's a good moneymaker. Is that what it is? Is that what gets put at risk? What exactly gets put at risk? Do you have an open line of communication to Jay Sugarman in the front office? Is that what you're afraid of losing? I'm going to tell you why it's bullshit, though. It's very simple. I, lowly me, have a podcast, Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. Okay? I do this with a former Flyer, Bundy, Chris Tarian. I do this with a longtime reporter who once worked for the organization, Anthony Sanfilippo. We were as critical of the Philadelphia Flyers as could be for years. Years. We were viewed as like enemy number one, persona non grata, as an entity. We were hated by the prior regime, hated because we put their feet to the fire. We would go down, sit in press row, and actively talk about how their new team of people that they had brought in that were not from the Philly area, didn't want to understand Philly sports, didn't care about Ed Snyder's legacy, they didn't care about the culture, any of it. We called those people, we used Xfinity Wi-Fi in Wells Fargo Center, did live stream shows between periods, pregame and postgame, talking about what an absolute shit show it was. Could we have lost our credentials? Maybe. You know what we also could have done? We could have appealed. Now, we had the little bit, if you want to even call it, backing of the Pro Hockey Writers Association. In theory, if they tried to revoke our credentials, we could have done an appeal, but it doesn't really matter, right? Like, there is a way, in theory, that takes you so far, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to get your credentials. There have been other reporters who have had theirs taken from other markets, other teams. But we did that. And then eventually, when the group changed over, they approached us and said, hey, do you guys want to do something together? You have this very loud, energetic fan base. Would you ever consider doing a partnership? And the number one thing that we said at the very beginning of that negotiation was, you don't control anything. You don't control what we say. You don't have influence on the way that we go after certain topics. If you screw up, we call you out on it. And it's written in the language of our contract, of our partnership deal with the Flyers. We did that. We said either we get this, we either get creative control, or we walk. We are not going into this to be propaganda. Guess what, Sons of Ben? Whatever kind of agreement you may or may not have with the team, if you haven't gotten that in writing, you probably should, or somebody should have by now. You have certain rights as a fan, and as a fan group, and as a supporter section. Telling people, well, we can't, there is a little bit of truth. We don't have something that will make everyone happy. That's true. There are probably certain fans who are like ready to burn half the stadium to the ground until Jay Sugarman sells, right? Like, not actually, but maybe. Some people are crazy. But there's no reason that you can't do something, that there's not something actionable that you could do. There's no reason you can't take signs in. There's no reason you can't take a TIFO in. There's no reason that underneath your shirts, you couldn't wear a letter shirt that in the river end could spell out, sell the team. Hey, there's a workaround. I just helped you. Put together shirts as a shirt TIFO. It's actually kind of stupid, but it's actually pretty good. Wear a shirt under your regular shirt so that the entire river end spells out, sell the team. Guess what? Is security going to strip you? I don't think so. That's another problem. Just throwing it out there. Sell the team shirts. Do something. The fan base is legitimately asking for you as the conduit to the ownership. Do something. And it to me, it comes back to this weird entitlement, this weird thing that some of those people do. Like, I don't know what the point of the Sons of Ben is if they aren't willing to be critical of ownership. If when they're watching their team go from being a cup contender to a team that might miss the playoffs entirely, if that doesn't incense them and make them want to do something, I don't know what will. And if you serve on that board, or if you're one of these capos, what's the point? What are you doing? Like, is it for the fans or is it for you specifically? Is it for you individually? Are you getting some kind of perk from it? What is it? Because the Union fans that found the clip yesterday, those fine people, there were so many responses to that tweet, to that video, that it was people saying, like, I've had season tickets for a decade and I'm going to get rid of them. We had the guy say on the show yesterday, I can't wait for that opt-out email to hit my inbox. It's going to hit like crack or going to hit like a drug. I mean, the Union they're going to lose fans here. I said in the comment, the one thing that actually made me laugh about the thing I said yesterday is I said, like, they had the opportunity to not be the Phillies bitch in the summer. And that's true. And it's like, I felt like for a while, that was the thing that was missed out on, is there were so many times that the Union had the ability to capture the imaginations and the hearts and the minds of the Delaware Valley because the Phillies were so bad. And now the Phillies are very good, are in the midst of one of their best seasons that any of us can remember, despite the fact that they've lost Schwarber and Harper for an extended period of time here. And the Union missed out on that. They missed out on the chance to capitalize. Michael Barrera checks in, says they think the meeting is going to accomplish something. It's sad between the Sons of Ben and ownership. Sean C. says the Sons of Ben hate everyone not in their group. Michael Barrera actually checks in here with a conversation that he had with a Sons of Ben member when discussing the soft protest. They said, I got a meeting with the front office, so I guess it accomplished something. What did those signs do? That's fucking hilarious. That's funny. What was the silent protest? Did they just sit down? What did the Sons of Ben do? Because I'll answer that person now. What did the signs do? The signs got Crossing Broad to cover it. The signs got other local media outlets to cover it. Whatever your silent protest was, I still don't even know. I'm talking about the weekend. I don't know. What did the Sons of Ben do? They put out a weird statement. Then they put out a sassy statement or a sassy tweet that attached a PDF. What did they do? I don't know. I'm going to go to Jose Nunez. The Inquirer article, do you believe those questions had to be submitted and vetted by the PR team? If so, that should have been disclosed for credibility, no? Here's where you run into a tricky thing. Let me do it like this. Because I want to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing here. Let me think. Okay, I'm going to use Snow the Goalie as another example. Last summer, before we partnered with the team, we sat down with Dan Hilferty, who's not the owner. He'll tell you he's not the owner, but like to the general fan base, they'll refer to him as the owner. He's the governor of the team. He's the guy who like took Dave Scott's position, who filled in, kind of took over for Ed Snyder when he passed. Brian Roberts and Comcast corporate own the Flyers. Dan Hilferty is seen as the owner of the Flyers. Okay. And he admits to being a fan, all that. Last year, the Flyers reached out and said, hey, we had this thought. This is before the partnership. This is before that even became a conversation. Hey, Dan Hilferty likes what you guys are doing, wants to potentially do some kind of an interview with you guys. We'll do it. We'll have our team film it. You know, go to Wells Fargo Center, sit at, I think it was Adrian Restaurant, and it was, you know, do you have any interest? And we're like, well, yeah. And we have some topics that we'll go on. And part of the negotiation that you work out with, especially if it's the owner of a team, is there might be something where you say, hey, is there anything that you guys don't want us to talk about? And then there's something on the other side as well. Like, if we do this, we have to be able to ask about whatever, right? Dan Hilferty's a good guy. There weren't anything, there's nothing that I can remember, because this is before the Carter Hart thing played out. I think that we kind of acknowledged we weren't going to ask him about Carter Hart because nothing had come out publicly yet about the charges by the London police. This is like months and months and months before that ever actually showed up. There had been murmurs and all that. But we pretty much said, we're not going to ask about that because he can't say anything publicly. He might not even know. There's no advantage to it. That's legitimately the only thing when we sat down for that interview that we offered up and said, we're just not going to ask about that. The Flyers, to their credit, gave us nothing. They said nothing is off limits. You want to ask about the Sixers, you want to ask about the stadium, you want to ask about the development, you want to ask about the team, about the prior administration, everything. Have at it. That's how we negotiated it. Like, that's what we did. So I can tell you that that's why I say I'm in this very unique position that I can kind of pull back the curtain here. And if they asked for something else, I'd tell you. It's my show. I don't give a shit. I'll tell you the truth. So I pull back the curtain. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, if you sit down with the owner of a team as a media member, it is possible, not the necessary norm, it is possible that the team could ask for topics. What are some of the things that you might ask about? And it's not because you're supposed to run the questions by them. It's so that the owner or whoever from the front office or whatever has a general idea of the kind of things you might ask about. Now, again, we are very lucky, I guess, that with Snow the goalie, we don't have to present the questions. And often we'll see Keith Jones or Danny Briere and pull them onto the Press Row show. There's clearly been no prep. We clearly have not submitted to them any of the topics that we're going to bring up. So again, like maybe we just did a good job of negotiating that. I don't know. You shouldn't necessarily have to run your questions by. I think that when you're in politics, it's possible that you might have to get the questions approved. But if you're in sports media, it shouldn't be the case. Give me a second. I'm going to cough my face. Okay. So, Jose, to answer your question, I don't know if Tannewald had to submit his questions. I have not talked to him. I have not asked him. For the sake of transparency, it's probably something to mention in an editor's note if he did have to get every question vetted. And I would still argue that if that was the case, you don't even take the interview. It's not worth it at that point because then it really is just a fluff piece and it really is just PR for the team. All right, let me keep going here. Sean C. said the Sons of Ben were silent for the first 5 minutes of the match to represent 5 straight losses. Michael checks in with the same thing. They'll add a minute of silence for every loss moving forward. Get the The funny thing is, if you've gone to a Union game over the years and the Union fall behind, you'll know that the Sons of Ben typically resort to silence anyway. Okay, I digress. Oh, that was actually, when I said like I have a checkered past with the Sons of Ben, there was a game that I was at. It was the U.S. Open Cup, and it was against Red Bull. And the Red Bull fans were so freaking loud, unbelievably loud, 10x the volume of what the Sons of Ben were. And if you've been down there, you know the away supporters have a little sliver of a corner section. The river end is for the supporters, all that. Those Red Bull fans were significantly louder. Union go on to lose that game. I walk over to where the, I guess, capos and some of the leadership of the Sons of Ben were. I forget the guy's name. I think I remember his first name. I'm not going to blast him because I have no idea what has ever happened to this guy. I don't know if he's still involved or not. I will keep his name out. It was not Kenny Hansen, lovely guy. It was somebody else. And I said, those fans were louder and more organized and did a much better job than this group did. Now, I had some profanity in there. But the point was, they were better, they were louder, their team won. What are we doing here? And I will never forget the reaction. It was this dude and a few of the other people from either leadership or those capos, and they said, who are you? Who are you? Like, just take a second here. This is before I was in Philly media. I'm still not a big deal. I was a card-carrying member of the Sons of Ben. I was a supporter. I was somebody who actually cared, who actually did sing and scream the entire game, while many people sat and while many people were just stone cold silent. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. I think that was the last year that I carried that I was a card-carrying member of the Sons of Ben. I think that was the thing that killed it. I think that was the thing that made me say, nope. Would I go on to occasionally hop into the Sons of Ben from time to time with a ticket and support the team because they're great seats? Yep. Did I ever really respect the institution, the organization of the Sons of Ben after that? Not really. They do some good community work, so I'm not going to take that away from them. But that told me all I needed to know. 5-minute silence is a joke. Adding a minute of silence is a joke. Walk out of the stadium. Walk out. The players and the coaches are adults. Walk out. Leave the river end empty. In fact, leave the river end empty. Get a few of the Keystone Ultras shirts that they're selling that say sell the team. Put those on the back of the chairs and leave. So that when the camera zooms in and when all the media sitting in the press box says, wow, the Sons of Ben walked out, holy shit, and they start tweeting it out, it becomes a big thing on social media, they'll zoom in and they'll take a picture of those seats. And that'll tell them everything they need to know. Here's an idea. Sons of Ben, walk out of the river end and leave a sell the team shirt for each loss in a row. That is more impactful than silence. And if you want to still support the team, do this. Walk out, go stand outside the gates of the stadium, and do all the chants and all the songs from outside. There, you're still supporting while actively showing that you don't support ownership. This isn't hard. Not hard. Sean also says that the Sons of Ben left a tifo in the parking lot that read, help wanted. So yeah, not great, guys. Not great. Pallet 12 says that they left the tifo in the lot because they were afraid of the consequences. Wimpy. Chris Galvin checks in and says, the irony of not doing anything because ownership is doing nothing to improve the team is amazing. Jose Nunez, who was the one who clipped the show yesterday, put that clip out that a lot of these Union fans found. No, I didn't ask you, Siri. Said that he's never had to run the list of questions by. He's a beat reporter for the Union. That he's never had to run questions by for players, but has been given guidance by the team, like reporting the Bedoya issue last year. And that's fair. When you're a reporter, you're supposed to check in with PR from time to time. If you hear a rumor or if you get it substantiated by multiple sources, you can go to PR first. In theory, you're supposed to check with PR to see if there's any kind of comment from anybody in the organization, from that player, the front office, or whoever it is. That's just part of what you're supposed to do. Todd Lewis says, the funny thing is this whole thing was supposed to be fans protesting ownership. Now it's turned into fans protesting the Sons of Ben. Talk about taking away the attention. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Sean C. very much does not like the Sons of Ben, calling them spineless, feckless cowards. It's great that it's being more publicly known. Michael says that it doesn't help that the river end is full of people who want cheap seats, but they don't want to chant and cheer. That, the funny thing is, when I go back to a few years ago, one of the things that I suggested when I was a member of the Sons of Ben and a season ticket holder is I said, guys, why don't you put together some kind of like a printout? It doesn't have to be like a laminated, super formal printout. Why don't you put out something that when there's somebody who, like, you look around, and if you're a season ticket holder, you recognize when it's people who are other season ticket holders or if it's somebody who just bought the tickets on secondary market. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And you say, hey, this is what we do. We stand the whole time. We sing, we chant, yada, yada. Typically, they say, oh, like what? Give them the paper. Give them the whatever. In this day and age, give them a QR code to scan that takes them to the lyrics to the songs. I know that for a while, they at least had things like those recordings of the chants and songs and everything on their site. But like there was a way to do it. That's how you kind of try to kill off the dead parts of the river end that are just people looking for cheap seats. Todd Lewis says that the Keystone Ultras have been louder than the Sons have been for the last couple of seasons. Funny thing is there's only like 40 people in the Keystone Ultras, and they're louder than 1,000 plus who sit in the Sons of Ben sections of the river end. I'll tell you what, it's bad. Sean also notes that they haven't won at home since March 30th. That's bad. It's really, really bad. Really bad. And the 140 casual who had the sign in the river end says, I'm not protesting Sons of Ben. I just want to keep making the Sugarman noise loud. That ultimately is where the ire should be at. That's ultimately where all of the anger should be guided. That's it. And Todd also checks in and says that Minnesota United's team has a QR code that you scan before you go into the supporter section. See, they know it. They get it. They understand. That's good fan service. All right, I'm done with the Union for right now. I might come back to them at some point. I'm going to be very fascinated. I want to see what comes out of the union leadership the union and Sons of Ben leadership meeting. I expect nothing to change. I could be wrong. I'm probably not, but I could be wrong. I hope that this gives people context on what's going on. Now, I know I was going to talk about Paul George and Tyrese Maxey on today's show. I know it's in the thumbnail. It's in the description of the episode. I might have to rework the thumbnail. I'm going to probably move that to Friday. The show's already over an hour. My goal has always been do the show for 30 to 45 minutes. We're already way over time. I'll talk about the Sixers on Friday's show, along with other big topics in Philly sports and national sports. I want to thank everybody who joined me live for the first time ever today over on YouTube at The Russ Joy Show, wherever you get your podcasts, at The Russ Joy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. A big, big thank you to all of you who tuned in. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you get notified whenever the show goes live. This show is live every Tuesday and Friday at 8 a.m. So I want to thank all of you again. Make sure you share this video, like the video, share the video, subscribe. If you listen to it in the podcast feed, share it with a few Philly sports fans in your world. Like I said from the very onset of the show, I'm not going to create controversy for the sake of creating controversy. I'm not going to just talk about the Eagles just to talk about the Eagles. Today, we went way off of what the radio would do. We talked about a big thing in Philly sports, which was what happened over the weekend with the Philadelphia Union. So I want to thank you all again, and I will talk to all of you on Friday here at 8 a.m. on The Russ Joy Show. Have a great week, everybody.